Tonight we're going to look at a film from Serbia, which is one of the nations that used to be part of Yugoslavia, called The Trap. I discovered this film. It's interesting that it was completely ignored by critics. It was ignored by distribution. It came into the theaters maybe a week at most left. And as I was moving through, I came upon it by accident. And when I looked at it, I was really somewhat shocked. It's an idea about a film that gets ignored in America, but it has really it has vital sort of issues that should be thought about. It has marvelous acting, and it is very interesting direction. So that is one of the reasons we chose it. And when I've shown it before, we've shown it a couple of times at Cine Club, and very enthusiastic and very, very thoughtful reactions from it, so that I felt we should look at it tonight. For some of you, you may not know, but the country of Yugoslavia was hit by a terrific civil war that started in the early 90s. It's one of the great tragedies of the last century, and it basically brought out the brutality in people. The stories are enormously cruel about that war. The amount of massacres, even people pulling their neighbors and putting them in the street and setting them afire. I mean, this is like really horrible situations, and when you're thinking of a civil war, you really don't imagine that can happen in a civilized country, but it can. And it is one of the sadnesses of the world. However, in this film, there are these certain dilemmas. I often talk about the choices that you have to make. Most people make choices like there are two choices, and one of them is going to benefit them and one is going to harm them, or one is going to be a fairly good decision and one is going to be a pretty awful decision. Those are easy things to decide. But when you get to be an adult, those issues become more complex. And often, I always say you'll know that you're an adult when you have to make a decision in which both of the consequences of the decision are bad. You're trying to decide what would be the worst and what would be less bad in a decision you're making. And the fact is, it's not going to turn out well has got a lot to do with your facing reality and having to deal with it. So in this case, it is a really difficult decision that the main character makes. And it brings up a lot of moral questions about what we think good and bad is. And so I think that's something that I want you to really think about during the film. And you really can put yourself in the protagonist's place and try to figure out what would I do in a situation like this? Is there really another alternative? We can talk about that after the film. But I think it's a very strong film, really good acting, really interesting directing, and I think we can look at that and it will be something that we really can contemplate and talk about. We'll see you then.